Greetings! Welcome to another episode of Porygondolier. I recently did a video showcasing the adventures of a single Porygon trying to beat Volo, who I've added into Pokemon Red. Today's installment is a sort of follow-up to that video, and will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet, I'd encourage you to click the link above, which will take you to that video before automatically bringing you back here. Apparently, it's called a playlist. The plan for today is as follows. Firstly, I want to see if a single Porygon can beat Volo in Legends Arceus, and make some non-scientific comparisons. I also want to address some questions from the previous video about how the 3 phases of the battle are supposed to work. This is all to do with what happens to stat modifiers, status ailments, substitutes, and mimic moves when transitioning between parts of the battle. Finally, I'll be making some updates to Volo in Pokemon Red. So, in order to battle Volo, I first needed to begin a brand new save and play through the entire game, since Volo cannot be rebattled. And I have to say, this game is one that should be enjoyed, slowly, and at your own pace. I really don't recommend trying to rush through this game. It makes for a less than stellar experience. 2 out of 6 on the Pory scale. I eventually arrive at the Volo battle, and my Porygon is at level 74, with similar stats and the exact same moveset as my Gen 1 Porygon in its first battle with Mr. Volo. Straight away, we can see that the Ice Beam damage on his Spiritomb is at least somewhat similar. It is worth mentioning that the base power of Ice Beam is different, and the damage calculation is different too, so it's difficult to say much more than, seems about right. Anyway, he now calls back his Spiritomb and sends out Lucario. A smart move since Lucario has fighting type moves that will do big damage to Porygon. Like that! In my second attempt, more or less the same thing happens again. So I spend a few IRL days training up my Porygon to level 89, matching Gen 1 Porygon when it did beat Volo. Once again he switches to Lucario, but Porygon is now able to remain floating after a close combat. Porygon does good damage with a psychic attack, and Volo whips out a full restore, which it turns out he has exactly 1 of for the entire battle. I do actually defeat Lucario, but with Porygon already low on HP, Roserade quickly takes me out. Now, since I have some questions to answer, I continue the battle, and the idea I have is to get my Chatot to use Mimic and Nasty Plot. Chatot? Chatot? Chatot. Let's go with Chatot. This will show us if boosts and Mimic moves carry over from the Volo fight into Giratina. And at this point, I'll mention that Substitute doesn't actually exist in this game, one of many moves that was axed for the simplified battle system. So having mimicked Hypnosis and come up with a cunning nasty plot that probably involves using stronger attacks, I defeat Spiritomb and await the arrival of Giratina. We can see in the cutscene that Chatot is no longer in battle, and after Giratina appears, it's sent out once again. So as you'd expect, anything and everything from the previous battle is reset, which is nice as that's already the case in Red. I did many more battles after this and came to the conclusion that the right thing to do was to completely max out my Porygon, and also power up my bird. In this battle, Porygon still loses to Lucario, but after using a revive, for testing purposes only, I paralyze Giratina before defeating it with Chatot. When Giratina gets back up, we can see that it's no longer paralyzed, and Chatot seems to have hung on to its nasty plot. But since it's instantly taken down, I couldn't check its Mimic move. In the next battle, Chatot meets Giratina 2 with full HP, and is able to hold on to consciousness despite taking 2 Dragon Claws in a row. And we can now see that without a doubt, both Mimic moves and stat boosts are maintained between the Giratina phases, so there's some homework to do there in Red. But I have one more thing to check, which is Giratina's own stat modifiers. Since we saw it recover from paralysis, I'm pretty sure that it will also recover from having its attack or defense lowered. But just to be sure, I bring along a Sliggoo and have it use Acid Spray in Strong Style, which has a 100% chance to lower the opponent's defensive stats. And after beating Giratina and watching it get back up, surprisingly, its stats are still lowered, which I do find a bit odd, but it is what it is, and with that, I have all of my questions answered. Except for one. Can this Porygon beat Volo on its own? Now, you may remember that in my previous video, I made use of Sharpen to trigger the badge boost glitch and take Volo down at level 89. Of course, in this game, there are no badges, let alone a badge boost glitch. In fact, Sharpen doesn't even exist, and Porygon doesn't have access to any moves to boost its own stats. This means I have one gap to fill in my moveset, and the move I'm going for is Thunderwave. Aside from AI, which I'll come back to, the one big difference in the Volo battle here compared to Red is the turn-taking system. Unlike basically all other Pokemon games where the faster Pokemon goes first, Legends Arceus has a strange system of choosing the next attacker based on something called action speed. It's a whole complicated thing, but the bottom line is that Volo has a lot more chance to actually attack me in this game, and Giratina seems to get a free shot or two at the start of both phases. In other words, Giratina cheats. You are very much not meant to fight Volo with a single Pokemon. In fact, this battle is difficult even with an entire team. The first big obstacle is Lucario. If it uses Bulk Up before close combat, it's basically a one-hit KO on Porygon. My only countermeasure is to use Thunderwave and hope for some good luck with Paralysis. This works out maybe 30% of the time. The rest of the battle is actually pretty straightforward now, with only occasional losses to his other Pokemon due to unlucky RNG. Giratina, however, is another story completely. Since it has Aura Sphere, which is super effective against Porygon, and good AI to boot, it uses this move on repeat, and it's a scramble to keep recovering while hoping for good paralysis luck and occasionally getting in an Ice Beam. When Origin Form Giratina comes out, it quite often attacks in the Agile style first, which allows it to get in another Aura Sphere immediately after. In order to survive this, Porygon pretty much needs to come in with full HP. This all adds up to needing a whole lot of good luck. On more than one occasion, I'm tempted to upgrade my Porygon to version 2.0 and try it that way. But I resist and persist, and after many grueling defeats, Porygon gets the battle of a lifetime. Firstly, Spiritomb goes down without doing any damage to Porygon, which is great since just like in Gen 1, Spiritomb can be quite a menace with Hypnosis. Lucario comes out and uses Bullet Punch, followed by Bulk Up. This is usually a bad sign, as a single close combat will finish me off, but Paralysis works and we take it down in 2. The rest of the battle plays out pretty smoothly, and I reach Garchomp with 9 recovers remaining, which basically never happens. I use 2 recovers here and bring Garchomp down in 1. Giratina only uses Aura Sphere once, which means I can go straight for Thunderwave instead of recover. Then after using Ice Beam twice, Giratina gets Frostbite. And unlike Freeze in the mainline games, Frostbite is basically Burn, doing a little bit of damage at the end of every turn. This means I can now spam recover and watch Giratina's health go down automatically. And this almost works, but the Frostbite wears off and Giratina is left with a sliver of health. Nevertheless, I'm able to recover to full HP and finish it off with Psychic. This puts me in the best possible position for Giratina too, and it's a good thing as well, since it goes for a double Aura Sphere right away. And I'm pretty low on PP now, so a few things need to go right. Did I mention this game doesn't have PP ups? Whose idea was that? The victor here will be decided by how lucky I get with Paralysis. Unfortunately, Lady Luck smiles in my favour. But then, Giratina gets in a critical hit, and just look at how close this battle is. But it's my turn now, and with Porygon's final remaining Ice Beam, victory is secured at last. I've gone through this pretty quickly for the video, but this took me about half a day of attempts. It's pretty frustrating to have to rely this heavily on the RNG to win. But that's Legends Arceus for you, and all the more reason to add Volo into Gen 1. And speaking of Gen 1, this video isn't over. Yeah, I said there was a lot to cover, right? So I want to upgrade my Volo, but first I'd like to test out the moveset using Thunderwave and see how that goes. And since I won't be using Mimic, Substitute, or any moves that cause stat changes, the specifics around Giratina's phases won't make any difference today. This goes reasonably well for a while, until Lucario turns up, and a single shot from close combat knocks my Porygon cleanly out. But okay, in Legends Arceus, Porygon was maxed out, so I'll max out my Porygon here as well, albeit I'm not going to do anything about its DVs. After going through the league several times, it reaches level 100, and I lost the footage for that, but here it is at level 99, but Porygon can still get stronger even after hitting level 100, and that's what these EV indicators are for on my stats bar. EVs increase a little bit for each Pokemon defeated, and max out at 65,000, 65,535. That's a big number. But stats only get recalculated on level up, so even as it picks up EVs, we can see that its stats don't budge. There's a little technique to counter this, known simply as the box trick. By depositing a Pokemon in the PC and withdrawing it, its stats get recalculated, and we can see the results of Porygon's special training. Its stats are still less than they were in Legends Arceus, but these are very different games with a vastly different system for training stats, and the difference is slightly less when we factor in badge boosts. I take on Volo again, and in this fight his Lucario doesn't even bother to use close combat. And likewise with Giratina, the moves it chooses are completely random. It's somewhat close, but I'm able to win on my first try, and this really put a spotlight on the differences in AI. Actually, I should mention that in the case of Red, it's a complete lack of AI, as I hadn't given Volo any AI of which to speak. His use of moves was entirely random. The only trainers that work like this in Gen 1 are the Youngster and Cue-Ball. I'm sure that detail doesn't require any further explanation, although I'm not sure what Cue-Ball did to deserve that. So it's quite straightforward to give Volo the best AI the game has, which means he'll now favour super effective moves, and might even use some stat boosts deliberately. It's less easy to make Giratina act in this way, as all wild encounters in the game use random move selection. However, by adding an exception for wild battles in the museum, I'm able to make the game use Volo's AI even when battling Giratina, and this is what that looks like. When Lucario comes out, we can see that it's now making deliberate use of close combat. It's also quite happy to make use of Bulk Up, which is a non-damaging fighting type move. This is just how Gen 1 AI works, but I'm not planning to make changes to fundamental things like that. Against Giratina, we can see that it's now spamming Aura Sphere on every turn, exactly how it does in Legends Arceus. Previously, it was quite content using Shadow Force, which Porygon is immune to. As a result, the two phases of Giratina now feel quite similar to Legends Arceus, with me having to make careful use of Thunder Wave and Recover, and occasionally getting in an Ice Beam. And while I do win on the first time, I mostly attribute this to the classic system of taking turns, and Giratina not getting a bunch of free shots at the start of its battles. So that's the move choice part of his AI sorted. There's also the matter of him switching Pokemon out to those with advantageous types. But Gen 1 has no such system. In fact, when you see a Juggler or Agatha switching, they're actually just switching to the next Pokemon in their party. I don't really see how that helps to win battles, so I'm not planning to apply that behaviour to Volo. Also, tactically switching Pokemon is probably much more valuable when battling a whole team, rather than a single Pokemon. As for that one full restore he has access to, I'm a little bit torn on this one. In Gen 1, trainers that can use items on their Pokemon have the same number of items for each of their Pokemon. For example, Brock gets 5 full heals for Geodude and 5 for Onix. The champion has 1 full restore per Pokemon, although there is only a 13% chance for him to use it when they have low HP. The most Gen 1 way to implement this would probably be to reuse the routine from the champion battle, but if I really try, I could probably give him 1 full restore for his whole team. Let me know in the comments what you think I should do on this one. As for the Giratina stuff, I'll make some changes and reveal the results in the next episode of Solo Volo. And if you love mushrooms, have I got the video for you! And as always, I'd like to wish you a wonderful day, and I look forward to welcoming you back to another video soon. For now, bye!